Welcome to Psychocinematic, the podcast where we analyse depictions of mental illness and disability in popular film and TV. Before we start, this podcast is not designed to be therapeutic, prescriptive, or constitute a formal diagnosis for any listener. For a longer version of this disclaimer, please check the episode notes on your podcast app. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we record this podcast today, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. We recognise their continued connection to the land and waters of this beautiful place and acknowledge that they never ceded sovereignty. We respect all elders and ancestors and any First Nations people listening here today. I'm very excited to have you on the podcast today. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to talk a little bit about yourself? I've got your bio here, but if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Eric Garcia. I am a journalist based in Washington, D.C. I am currently the senior Washington correspondent and bureau chief for The Independent. I'm also a columnist for MSNBC. I wrote a book that came out last year called We're Not Broken, Changing the Autism Conversation, that is about, just that, looking at what would society look like if we decided to stop curing autistic people and instead help them live more fulfilling lives. I've also worked at the Washington Post, The Hill, Roll Call, National Journal, and Market Watch. I've also written for places like The New Republic, Salon, The Daily Beast, and yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Thank you. And as any of our podcast listeners can attest to, you're probably the most qualified and high profile and well-written guest we've had on this show. And you should probably do your own podcast at this point because...
Oh, God, no, I'm way too lazy to do that. So.
And I actually discovered you from your guests on the podcasts You Are Good and You're Wrong About.
Yeah.
I'm just absolutely stoked that you've chosen to talk to me today because they're my favourite podcasts pretty much ever. And I'm really excited to read your book. I haven't got my hands on it yet. I haven't seen it in the shops here, but I know it is available online. So I will get my hands onto that.
We're working on that. I would like to have it come out, as soon as possible. But, logistics. We got a supply chain crisis. So,
Today we are covering Atypical, which I've been wanting to cover for ages. So I'm stoked that we'll be talking through it with you today. We've actually both covered Rain Man. We've covered it on our podcast.
We have at great length.
I wanted to choose this one because it was sort of like we've come a long way since Rain Man, but have we actually come far enough?
Yeah, there are a lot of parallels between Rain Man and Atypical, from the sibling dynamic, the younger sibling feeling kind of ignored by the overbearing parents, for the attention of the autistic kid, the kind of way that the kind of dynamic that autistic people are unable to connect with the world around them, or that they're too gullible, or that they are too myopic, or that they can't understand the world around them. All of those things are still, they're kind of common strains in Rain Man, and they're also in the same DNA, I think, of Atypical. And I think that's why the show kind of annoyed me when I watched the first season. I should say I had ACL surgery this week, so I've been in bed this whole week. So to get ready for this podcast, I've been binge watching and rewatching Atypical, which there are better things that I could have been doing.
I'm so sorry that you've spent your time doing that when you could be binging so many other things right now.
Exactly. I got some Oxycontin, so that makes it a little more bearable.
That's
so. I felt like it was something that I'd already seen. I felt like it was I felt like it was just kind of a lot of classically worn tropes. And of course, you could tell that there was no autistic input in the show. It was a lot of guesswork. Because I talked about this in Steve Silverman's book Neurotribes, which I'm sure you've read,
yes.
And then also, he talks about it in his book. I touch on it a little bit in my book, but that's largely because I cited his book. But, there were at least, Raymond Babbitt was based off of real people. He was based off of, I think his name is Joe Sullivan and Peter Guthrie. They were based off two real autistic people. The problem was, of course, at the end of the movie, Raymond Babbitt goes back to the institution, and, Peter Guthrie and Joe Sullivan, they lived, they lived with their families. But at the same time, they were based off of real people. Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman, did their research. You can tell that this was it was kind of second or third hand knowledge of autism.
Yeah.
And it just never, and it just didn't stick. And I think that there was a big gap in, you saw there was a big gap in how people who weren't autistic felt about Atypical versus people who were autistic. And I think that disconnect never really got fixed. Now, to their credit, we'll talk a little bit later about this. They did try to get better.
Yeah.
But I think that you can't, it's impossible to retcon the first season.
Yeah, and like, maybe they should have.
Yeah, maybe they should have, but like, it's impossible to unring that bell.
Yeah, it's already been rung.
And you can't really graft things onto it in a way that will make it cohesive, because later on they do have some autistic characters. They do add some bits of neurodivergence to other characters that were already existing, and we'll go into that. But at this point, it comes off almost as an afterthought.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah,
and that was my real that was what made it really hard for me to get into it. And I'll say this, like, Sam is actually the least interesting character on the show.
Yeah, I agree, and that says a lot as well.
Yeah, like he's not. By the end of the show, he's almost in the background.
Yeah,
is the thing that I've noticed.
Yeah.
He's not real. He doesn't really exist to move the story forward. Yeah,
it's kind of like everyone else around him is moving the story forward. I mean, obviously, pretty major developments happen throughout the series, but he's not the star attraction.
Because I should say, the other parts of the story that don't surround Sam are incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
His sister has a fascinating character.
I love her.
His
you probably noticed I love her.
Yeah. His parents have a really interesting character arc.
Yeah.
There are really interesting facets to all these people. But Sam's character arc almost doesn't. We get the big finale with him going, and spoiler alert, he goes to Antarctica, but we don't see him develop as a person, and I think that's what...
Yeah, it's more like he just sort of goes through life with these new stages of life and milestones, but like he's still the same person. That's
why the series didn't really resonate, I think, is that Sam became almost secondary to a lot of really interesting strains and stories throughout the show.
Yeah, I completely agree with that way of looking at it. And when I was, researching for this, I just automatically assumed that Rabia Rashid had some experience with autism. And she does say that she's got someone in her life that has autism. But no, she's just a TV writer. She did How I Met Your Mother and The Goldbergs and Will and Grace, and this was just her next project that she was like, hey, let's try this.
Yeah, it was just kind of one of those things that just like, oh, this is another thing that we need to do, and that's an interesting thing, because like I don't want to shit talk entertainment, because entertainment, your job, if you're in the entertainment industry, your job is to explore different facets of life and different people. Like I don't want to, but like at the same time, I feel like, especially with such a misunderstood condition like autism, you need to do a lot of work, a lot of legwork to get it right.
Especially if you're going to make it like a specific story about this boy with autism.
A specific story about autism. Like, so, I mean, in the book, in my book, I talked about, I interviewed Erica Milsom, who did, I don't know if you've seen that Pixar short, Loop, which is about an autistic.
No, I came across it when I was reading, but no, I haven't seen it yet.
You should watch it, because like Erica, from what I understand, as far as I know, is neurotypical. She knew some autistic people in her life, but what she did is she did legitimate work. She made sure that autistic people were included. Madison Bandy, who is the character in the show, who plays the voice actress who's the autistic character in the show, she herself is autistic. So she consulted with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. So like there is a way, I think, for neurotypicals to explore autism. I don't want to say like, oh, neurotypicals can't explore autism. That's, I think that it could be good to step out of your comfort zone. I think it would be good to explore different communities outside of your own.
Especially if you've got like some star power and some
the star power
platform in which you can do that. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Like, I mean, I think that you have that ability. If you have star power. And if you're like Rabia, you've written for Will and Grace and How I Met Your Mother, and like these shows that a lot of people love. Like my sister and I used to love watching Will and Grace, and Will and Grace is fantastic. I'm thinking about this because it made people comfortable with gay people,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a fantastic and it's an amazing show because the characters in them are complex and they're interesting and they have different. And from what I understand, like Eric McCormick, who plays a gay man in the show, as far as I know, he's heterosexual, but Sean Hayes is gay. But like, so again, it's not even a matter of is this person heterosexual playing a gay person. It's like, okay, how much work did you do? How much did you do to explore them? And how much room do you give these characters to grow and change and do all the things that other human characters are allowed to do,
Atypical focuses on a family living in Connecticut. I had to look up where they live because I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, like it's kind of like some nondescript New England suburb. Like, yeah.
Sam is the central character, played by Keir Gilchrist, who's on the autism spectrum. His family consists of mum, Elsa, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, dad, Doug, played by Michael Rappaport, and daughter, Casey, played by Bridget Lundy Payne, a non-binary queer actor who is my favourite person on the show.
Fantastic. I love Casey so much.
Me too. I just want a show about Casey.
Yeah, if there could be a spin-off about Casey, like I would absolutely watch that.
Totally. Elsa is a very overprotective, doting mother who has put her life into supporting Sam. Doug is an emergency medical technician, EMT, who is more of the stoic type of dad, struggling to connect with Sam's diagnosis. Elsa and Doug traverse a tricky marriage, both having affairs and periods of separation throughout the series, but they come together at the end. They plan a first responders course for people with autism, and Elsa starts a hairdressing business for kids with autism, which isn't really explored in the last couple of seasons, but anyway. Casey is a loving and protective younger sister, but has a tricky relationship with her mum, who always puts Sam first. Yeah. She loves running and is a star in track, which leads her to getting a scholarship at a private school. She also comes to realise she's bisexual by the end of the show, when she starts a relationship with Evan, who much later admits to having dyslexia, to just add a little bit of neurodiversity to the mix, but that doesn't really go anywhere. But breaks up with him to date Izzy, a fellow runner and a student at the private school. The pressure on her to run leads to her developing some major anxiety and eventually leave the private school to go back to her usual school and pursue running less intensely. And just a little side note, I kind of like that exploration of anxiety. That was one thing I really liked in the latest season. But the main arc, of course, is about Sam, who starts off the show deciding he wants to have a relationship. He's encouraged by his womanizing, overconfident, slacker colleague and schoolmate Zahid and his therapist Julia. After some failed dates, he realizes he's crushing on his therapist, which he pursues by breaking into her house and basically being inappropriate, which makes me sigh.
We'll talk about that because I have a lot of feelings about that part. Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about that part. Ugh. Meanwhile, his classmate Paige is also crushing on him. They start a relationship with many ups and downs throughout the series. Paige encourages the school to have a silent dance for the winter formal. In season 2, Sam starts planning for college and joins a support group for people with autism Sam's age. He also deals with his parents' separation and family upheaval. He's no longer seeing Julia, his therapist, however calls her every week. She's pregnant and also sort of ends up befriending Elsa. He gets accepted to college at Denton by writing an essay about autism. In season 3, Sam starts college and he and Paige juggle a long-distance relationship. Sam makes friends with Abby, who bond over art, and starts to build up his grades. Paige, however, drops out, having not found her feet in college. Zahid develops a toxic relationship with Gretchen, a plotline I have problems with, but I don't have time to go into that as well.
Yeah, I have so many problems with that plotline, yeah.
And Sam's dislike for her stops them being friends for a while. But they make up, and in season 4, they're living together in an extremely fancy loft, which takes Sam a lot of adjustment. Zahid finds out he has testicular cancer, which is luckily easily treated with surgery, and he becomes a nicer person after losing a testicle, which I assume is supposed to be a funny thing. He decides he wants to go to Antarctica, and the last season is a journey of Sam preparing for this trip. While the college trip there falls through, Sam decides he can pay for his own trip, and Doug decides he will finally take a holiday and go with Sam. He and Paige decide to put their relationship on a pause, and Paige gets into Habitat in Humanity, and that's the end of the whole show.
Yeah, so like, I mean, I breezed through the final season, so I should say, like, I didn't really. I took some notes, but not a lot of notes. I think but yeah, you got through it. But like, I mean, you got the gist of it, the most important parts of it. I think that like I mean, honestly, like one of the things that I've said, like probably the character who I have the most, I like the most and frustrates me the most is Zahid.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more.
Aside from Casey, who I think is the most interesting character, Zahid can simultaneously, in some ways, I feel like a lot of autistic people need a Zahid, and he talks about how he needs a Zahid. I feel like I had that. Like I had my roommate when I first moved to Washington D.C. when I was a White House intern. I had my friend Greg, who was my roommate, and Greg was kind of the opposite for me. He was this tall, handsome, white Irish Catholic dude from Buffalo, and he was just one of those guys who say like, "Hey Eric, do you want to come to happy hour with me, or do you want to come and come to a party with me?" And like he was like, and he would like teach me how to talk to women. And in exchange, because like he didn't know much about politics, and of course we were White House interns, like I kind of taught him a lot about like, okay, we were interested in the Obama administration, so we're like, okay, that's the Secretary of Defense, or that's kind of the, so we kind of, so like,
we taught each other.
Yeah, we like in some ways, like I think, because like we had another roommate, Travis, who was from Wisconsin. It would have been a great sitcom, all three of us were White House interns. We all need a Zahid, I think, even though I think Zahid kind of leads Sam down some bad paths sometimes. If Sam has trouble with social interaction, Zahid thrives off of social interaction almost to a fault, almost. Like, he needs to be the center of attention. He needs to be the... If you remember, there's that scene in the third season where they go to an art party.
Yes.
And he's kind of... This is where he meets Gretchen, where he kind of is unmoored because not everybody's like, hey, at 110%. So, but like...
I have to say, like, I found Zahid, like, a fun character. I thought he was a problematic character in the way...
He's a womanizer, to be sure,
Yeah, just the storyline with Gretchen. And he's a bit of a dick. But I can totally see that as well, and sort of helping Sam on a maybe not the best like way, but develop some of that confidence around interacting with others and women and stuff.
He definitely loves Sam, and I think that's, the kind of... The thing that you see is that Sam and Paige's relationship is kind of frustrating. His relationship with Casey and his relationship with Zahid, I think, are the best relationships on the show.
Yeah,
I
agree.
And they're definitely the most intimate and the most caring, and they show the most emotion and the most heart are the relationships with him and Casey, and his relationship with Zahid. You can tell he really cares about him. He really loves Zahid. And you can tell Zahid really loves Sam.
And I think with Zahid, he like accepts Sam like fully and doesn't try to really change anything about him. He's just like, you want some pointers on this, I'll help you with these
He's just
things.
a bad influence, There's a difference between being like trying to change him and being a bad influence. And like, he bless his heart, he may be a bad influence, but he does love Sam, and I can't fault him for that.
There was lots of interviews with Robia Rashid, who created Atypical, and she sort of explained that to Vulture, that she pulled inspiration from the fact that more and more people are being diagnosed with autism, and she was intrigued by how young people are navigating the world with a diagnosis that can be overwhelming. And she thought it was a cool way to tell a dating story, like, being someone on the spectrum and wanting independence. But she said that with an autistic teenage boy, she had to do a lot of real learning and listening to people, and it's a voice that she had to learn. And once she started diving into this world, this voice came naturally. She would just write, and the words came out. What do you think about that, Eric?
I don't want people to feel like they can't touch autism.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
And in fact, I think that, as I said before, if you are someone who has a lot of star power, like Robia seems like she does as a writer, that can be very beneficial. The fact that Michael Rappaport and the fact that Jennifer Jason Leigh were on the show was like, that gave the star power. But I think that what you need to do is that you need to have some embedded experience. So, like, for example, one of my favorite shows of all time is The Wire, and David Simon, who created the show, is a white dude, but it's obviously a show has a lot of people of color in West Baltimore. The difference is David Simon was a journalist covering Baltimore for a long time and covered the drug trade. So he at least had some baseline understanding of this is what the drug trade is. This is what life for black people in West Baltimore was. And he cast black people from West Baltimore, you know, or he cast black people from, you know, black Americans, you know. So that acknowledgement that this is now your world, and I think that you know, where she says like, you know, there's a lot of people who are getting diagnosed with autism, and I appreciate that she didn't say it's this newfangled thing, you know, because I think a lot of people think that like, oh my God, there's this, you know, increase in autism diagnosis. That's not the case. It's just
read Neurotribes.
yeah, just read Neurotribes. Diagnostic criteria got better, and in America, this is my little tangent, is that in America there were two laws that really made diagnosis a little bit better. There was the Americans with Disabilities Act, and there's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and also known as IDEA. And the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is really important because what it said was that it classified autism as a disability instead of like a mental illness or something like that. So it meant that schools had to report to the federal government how many autistic children they were serving. So the diagnostic criteria that Steve's book goes into, and I should just tell people to read his book, coupled with the fact that laws just changed that meant that you had to report more people, just meant that that was in 1990. So now a lot of people are getting diagnosed in the 1990s and the 2000s, and just now, you know, they're going like Sam is part of that cohort. Like Sam age-wise is part of that cohort that first got the diagnosis or grew up with that diagnosis, and that it wasn't this kind of weird why or what is this thing. So that makes sense. But I think that when she says that she did a lot of listening, my answer is my question is to whom? You know, who did she listen to? And because like again, she's allowed to, as an artist, she's allowed to explore other cultures, and that can be great, you know. At the same time, but like, who was she listening to? What was the intellectual grounding in the show? And because you know, of course, when you get good at something, like if you learn to play an instrument, then you can just be natural, and you know, you can improvise and you can riff and, you know, solo and all that. But when you develop that voice and it's rooted in not autistic voices, then you can just write and write and write and write and write. But is it rooted in the
actual world that you're covering?
In the truth?
Yeah.
Is it rooted in the truth? Because like fiction is a way of telling the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
It always has been. Fiction is a way of exploring the truth in a way that nonfiction can't. And I worried that, and I think also the fact that she wanted to make a dating show, or that was kind of from the outset, I think that kind of concerns me, because again, Will and Grace is great because it shows what gay life is beyond just dating.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right.
I think it's a brilliant show because of that.
And I wonder if season 1 in Atypical is, I think it's the worst season.
It is the worst season.
Everyone would probably agree. It's also very boxed in, and that's the narrative, and then it sort of explores, and then that's kind of all the depth she has for his character, I feel.
Yeah, it's very surface level. Because I know that the central dilemma in the first season is that he's crushing on his therapist, and you know, but Paige is the one who likes him, and he's kind of in this dilemma. The real trouble is that there's never really, and this is a testament, like there's nothing believable into why he would like Paige. And there's no reason for people to think that, oh, Paige would be a suitable partner for him, because she's kind of condescending toward him.
She's not very nice, and she's extremely annoying.
Paige gets on my nerves in ways that we could go into later. They change her character a little bit, but again, like, she never stops being insufferable.
Yeah.
But there's never this real. You have to be willing to suspend your disbelief when you're watching any kind of fiction or any kind of. there's never really any like, okay, I believe that these two can be a couple one day. I believe that these two can be the Sam and Paige relationship is just not believable in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And it's kind of doesn't really develop throughout the season. Like, I find it...
It doesn't.
I honestly, in the season 4, I was like, are they still together? Because it seems...
Yeah, no. I think one of the reasons why I don't like it is because we do see that Sam can show affection for people. We do see that he eventually shows affection and emotion with his dad. Like, it takes like hell to eventually go. And you see that he does in his own way. He shows that he cares about Casey. One of my favorite things is that, like, when it comes out that she's bisexual, or when she starts dating Izzy, he's just like, oh, it's like these gay penguins I know. That's a really weirdly sweet moment.
Yeah.
Because he's just like, it doesn't seem weird to him, you know? And it's like, okay, my sister likes girls. And, you know, sometimes gay penguins can raise chicks better than, you know, but like, you never see, you know, he obviously gives that speech for Paige and he says that he loves her, but like, you don't see him like, you know, going out of his way. He doesn't really feel invested in the relationship.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, the final few episodes of the 3rd season, it's him trying to win Zahid back.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's true.
And as a credit to the writers, they actually make you care about Sam and Zahid's relationship.
Yeah.
You know, they make you know, as much as Rabia says that she wants a love story or a dating story about autism, the friendship arcs in Atypical are far better.
Definitely. And the family relationship.
The family relationships are great, but they never really teased out how toxic autism. I've never been a fan of autism moms, and we talk a lot about how autism moms are bad for autistic people, but I don't think. But Atypical does touch on this, but they never really go there. They never are afraid to completely dive into the water about how autism mom culture is bad for parents of autistic people too.
Can you tell me a bit more about when you say autism mums, what you mean by that, just for our
audience? So you know, there's that parent support group in the show that she's in. But autism moms, I can't say, I don't know if this is a thing in Australia, but like in America, it's become a real thing where like there's the autism mommy warrior. There's the mom who like, I'm an autism mom. It becomes almost, you know, there were a lot of mommy bloggers in the 2000s. There's still some mommy bloggers today, but they're, you know, I think that they've kind of ceded control. But like, I think a real reason why the autism mommy warrior really took off in the 90s into the 2000s, especially, is that for the longest time at the beginning of, and again, check Neurotribes, #check Steve. Steve's a friend. I love him. Like I adore him so much. But like, you know, so just read his book. But like, you know, for the longest time in public research, people blamed moms, unloving moms for causing autism.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, I feel like autism mommy warriors, that was a way of taking back. It wasn't until the 1970s that was completely, 1960s and 70s, that was debunked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's from like the 1930s and 40s to like the 60s. So that takes, you know, that did a lot of damage.
Yeah, the refrigerator
so
mom
I feel like the refrigerator mom thing, you know, Bruno Bettelheim and Leo Connor, and like there was you know, and I talk about this and you're wrong about, but like there's actually like there's an autistic girl in this movie with Elvis and Mary Tyler Moore, and like Mary Tyler Moore is a nun.
What is this
and
movie?
Like she says, I think this child might be autistic, and then like Elvis says something like, oh, you know, she's shut off from the world emotionally. You know, this is like when Elvis was doing a lot of movies. Like, it's called Change of Habit. I need to actually go back and watch it.
That.
Because like, who wouldn't love a movie with Elvis as a doctor and Mary Tyler Moore as a nun? I just love the fact that exists, and then just out of nowhere there's autism in it. But to that point, you know, so I feel like autism mommy warriors, that was a way of kind of taking back the narrative of like, okay, kind of screw you to the doctors and to the researchers who blamed us for decades. We're actually the ones who know what's best for our kids. And we know what we need to do. We're going to fight like hell to fight for our kids. and to fix our kids. A lot of it was rooted in fixing the kids.
Yes, exactly. And I see where that comes from too, because it's such a male-dominated field, and of course, you know, the woman is always the defective. So having to fight back on that would be a real pertinent thing to fight for their kids.
Just the same way, but in a lot of ways they fall into the same pitfalls that the researchers did, which is that they see themselves as the authorities rather than autistic people. Really, I feel like the best parents are the ones who listen to autistic people. But one of the things that, so like the support group, they kind of touch into like how snitty and catty the group is and how they compare each other. There's that like really one like kind of kooky, crunchy mom who said there was like a ghost in the house or something like that in that one episode, who like is kind of like the autism mom who thinks that she's the best at everything. So like I wish that there had been more of a critique about how parent culture isn't just bad for autistic people, it's bad for parents because you get into this pissing contest. They touch on it a little bit. I just wish that they had done a little bit more about it, because I feel like that would have been a really good explanation. Because again, like even though parents are not the center of autism culture, they still deserve, you know, compassion, and they still deserve all the good things. I wish that they had critiqued parent culture a little bit more and how it's bad for parents of autistic.
That would have helped. And I wonder if the reason why it wasn't critiqued enough is because in season 1 they had Michelle Dean, who was an autism consultant, who herself does not have autism, but she's very pro-inclusion and anti-stereotyping, and is assistant of special education at California State University. And then in season 2, they employed Elaine Hall, who is a parent of an autistic child and a huge inclusion advocate, and has a very pretty website where she's just looking happy and and that always makes me feel a bit cringe. And so I wonder if she'd actually employed some consultants more with autism rather than parents or people that work with autism. Not that they can't be valuable, but maybe that's where that culture wasn't really examined quite as much in this, because that were the people involved.
Yeah, like I say that one of the reasons why my mom did so great and like why she didn't get into all that was that there wasn't really an autism parent culture when I was growing up, you know, and I think that like, I mean, not to say that she didn't communicate with other parents or that they didn't, you know.
And there's good things about parent support as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And parent support can be a really good thing. But like, I think that one of the things I don't think there wasn't like this mommy culture that there is today. And I think that helped a lot, that my mom didn't fall into these pitfalls of like crucifying herself. Because like you do really kind of wind up flagellating yourself and thinking, oh, I'm not as good as this mom, you know, or I'm not as good as that mom, you know, or my kid isn't developing as well as the other kid is. So like you feel like you're not as good of a parent. Like it's not a healthy culture for the parent or the kid. So like I wish that for the sake of the parents, a lot of people will come off wind up thinking I'm anti-parent. I'm not anti-parent, you know, like I think that a lot of this the culture around autism also is bad for parents of autistic kids as well. So,
and I think I'm always a little bit wary when I hear about an organization or, you know, a charity designed at people with autism run by mums of autism, because it tends to have that, like, Autism Speaks is very much let's fix autism.
Even though they've gotten rid of the cure language, they still have a lot of that.
Yeah.
Again, it's not it was kind of grafted on after. But yeah, like I wish they had critiqued it, because they do. Because like one of the things I didn't like is that they almost kind of imply that Elsa has an affair because of all the stuff she's dealing with Sam.
Yeah,
and I really didn't like that.
Yeah.
A, it's bad for autistic people. B, it's really kind of a slap in the face for parents who don't cheat on their spouses.
I know.
You know?
And I feel like we're sort of supposed to see Elsa as like the stand-up mom who, like, you know, the board with all the different post-its and appointments, and she's got everything sorted for Sam. She's such a big support person for him, but also she's very deeply flawed as well. And
she's banging the bartender, as Casey would say.
Which is just... Oh.
I love that scene where like Casey just writes that "stop banging the bartender." Like it's just such a...
So back to Robia. Yeah, like also the fact that she said the voice came naturally for her, like as you were saying before, who's it natural for? Like,
who's it natural for, and why do you find it natural? It's like, I think one of the things to recognize is that when you're exploring these different cultures, it's kind of like learning a different language. That I love Anthony Bourdain, and one of the things I loved about Anthony Bourdain is he recognized that, like, look, I'm an American in Vietnam, or I'm an American in wherever the hell he was, in Africa or Iran, or and that made Anthony Bourdain fantastic. But so I think that Rabia, by the fact that she felt like it was a natural language, I think might have led her to assume a lot of things.
And she probably maybe should have run past that language to someone with autism who could have been like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think anytime you get too sure of yourself is probably the moment that you should probably. And this isn't just for neurotypical, like anybody. Like, anytime you get too sure of yourself, you need to make sure that, like, okay, why do I think this? Why am I so sure? Why am I so confident in myself?
Sometimes imposter syndrome is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just got a few things that I found out about when she was casting the first season. And Kia Gilchrist, as we said, does not have autism. And she sort of did end up casting a supporting actor in the first season who I completely forgot was even in there. I think he's only got a couple of episodes. Anthony Jacques.
Yeah.
So he was in there, and that was the only non-neurotypical actor. But she said that she actually did audition people with autism and just found that Kia Gilchrist was the right fit.
Which again makes me wonder, like, she already had a preconceived notion in her head.
Yeah.
And then she didn't change and adjust based on what she saw.
Exactly. Wouldn't that have been a better option and more sustainable? And because I feel like he's a very tick box.
He's very, very check the box. Like, you could tell he's an actor trying to be autistic and checking all the boxes. And again, this isn't, I'm not going to completely even knock Kia Gilchrist. It's more the fact that Rabia had this idea in her head and she didn't adjust to the realities of it. Like, like, I think that if you were to, one of the things I think about it as a journalist is that a lot of times I might have an idea in my head, but like the more people I talk to, then they're like, no, this isn't the way. Sometimes you just got to change. And sometimes you just got to be like, okay, this isn't what's going on. This isn't the truth. And sometimes it sucks. Sometimes you have to throw things out, like, especially if you're retarded, but you have to go with what the truth is. And it seems like that very much wasn't that wasn't followed. And what's interesting is that, like, I don't think that you saw Anthony Jacques anymore after the first season.
No, where did he go? He was a great actor.
But that's, and it shows that, like, I think maybe they realized, like, either A, they didn't think that he was interesting enough or autistic enough, which is weird enough, or they just realized, oh, we kind of fucked up. And, so we probably shouldn't, it was kind of almost a reminder that
maybe,
that we screwed up because they actually did cast autistic characters, autistic actors. But the fact that Kia Gilchrist fit what Rabia wanted more than autistic actors says more about Rabia than it does about autism.
And when she did come across Anthony, who auditioned, she actually loved him so much that she wrote a role for him, which is how he ended up in the show. So that doesn't,
which is good,
her, maybe, like, adjust the character you had in your head. If you're
adjust the character you had in. Yeah, exactly. So, like, adjust your expectations and adjust the fact that, not everything is going to fit in your head, And of course, the worst example of that is Sia, but, we can talk about that later.
In a different podcast.
We'll talk about that later. Or we don't have to talk about it at all. I just gotta say, so, like, what happened is, I don't know if you saw, I got into a whole Twitter fight with Kathy Griffin about Sia.
No, I didn't hear it.
But, like, because she's friends with Sia. But, like, what's funny is, like, literally the day that happened, my mom called me and she's like, have you heard about this terrible movie called Music by Sia? And she's like, and I was just like, have I heard about this?
Could write a book about it.
I could write a whole book about it. Come on. Because my mom, God bless her, she thought it was trash too. But, but I mean, it's rooted in the, look, we can dunk on Sia all we want. But the fact is that there was nobody who told her no.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the same way, I'm not going to say Rabia is as malicious as Sia.
No.
But it's rooted in the same thing, the same idea of Hollywood and the entertainment industry, that the entertainment industry clearly has an idea about what autism is.
Exactly.
And they're not going to adjust accordingly.
Well, yeah. Most people won't. And she said about Keir that, like, he plays the role really subtly and beautifully, and when he shifts into it, it's kind of startling.
Does he?
Totally natural. I mean, I disagree. But I also feel like it's like putting on a costume too. Like
it feels very much. He
shifts into it.
It feels like he dials up. I got an amplifier next to me. It feels like he dials up certain parts and he lowers some certain parts. It's kind of like a sound system.
It's a formula.
And it's not to say that there aren't some similarities. It doesn't. Not to say that there aren't some. That there aren't some parts of myself that I saw in him, but it's just like it feels like there was overly accentuated or overly, or some things were like there were things that like should have been touched on, but weren't. It's like the episode where Zahid and the season 4 opening was Zahid and Sam move in, and he's has all these rules. Like, it would have been nice to see that, like, okay, this is just a sensory thing, or this is an executive functioning thing. Like, this is something that like he needs for a sensory environment that like, or like, those are the problems. So like, but they didn't.
But I feel like she sort of covers that by like, he has headphones. Okay, we've ticked off.
Yeah, we've done that. Yeah, we've done that. Yeah, like he has the headphones. Okay, that because that fixes everything, right?
Yeah. Done, sort of.
Yeah. So again, like there were so many. The thing that I kept on thinking whenever I went, especially when I went back and I watched, when I binge watched, is I kept on thinking again. I'm one of those people who like I don't want to completely bag on it, but because there were a lot of opportunities. I kept on feeling like there was missed opportunity after missed opportunity after missed opportunity. So like in season 3 when like Sam is freaking out about the 4 and 5 statistic. That could have been a great exploration into, well, why is that? There's somebody rattles off in his support group that only 4 and 5 autistic students graduate from college in 4 years.
Yeah.
That does it. And then, of course, he has this really heartfelt moment with his dad where he talks about it. And then what they do is they almost make it almost kind of like a personal failing of autistic people that they can't do it. And there's that one part where he says, like,
and that's
because
what
maybe
he takes it on now.
We're college isn't meant. He says to his dad, college isn't meant for people like us. People like us can't do college. Instead of saying, instead of exploring, well, why is that the case? Yeah. Because like if 4 and 5, because like, so if 1 in 10 autistic people don't finish college in 4 years, that could be maybe not all autistic people are cut off for college. Some things again, and then maybe it was a little bit of both, like one autistic, a little bit on the autistic person, a little bit on the university. But like when it's 4 and 5, and even then, like you got to think, well, maybe the school didn't do enough to help them succeed, or maybe this and that. Or maybe it's okay if you don't graduate in 4 years. I graduated in 5 years. I graduated college in 5 years. Yeah. So yeah. And I don't know what the university system is in Australia, but not everybody. I know a lot of people who are neurotypical who don't graduate in 4 years. Because I went to community college, and I know a lot of people who things work that way. But like,
there's more stuff behind.
There's more stuff behind that, but like the fact that they made it almost like, okay, these kids are doomed. Instead of like, well, why is that the case? Or why is it that, instead of exploring like, hey, things are kind of screwed up. Like one of the things that like, I'm glad that they have those scenes in the support room, like where the students all hang out. But like, I wish that they had more talk of them kind of confiding in each other.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this really sucks. Or this really...
like the room in X and Y is like really echoing. It really affects,
or like, because even when Sam has his ethics class, they make the professor really out to be kind of a wise ass.
And
they almost make it seem like, oh, well, she's doing a favor, because in the end, she kind of helps him with his ethics. It's like almost, oh, well, she's kind of giving him a discipline. Instead of like, the thing I got with her is like, you're being a dick, lady, Like you're being when he's saying, can you slow down? she speeds up, and I was like, no, you're being an asshole, you know?
Yeah.
And then again, they make it seem like, oh, well, Sam just can't keep up. And then of course he gets a note taker, but like they make it this very, very individualized thing. And instead of her being empathetic, because like I think about it and I write about it in my book, that the only way I got through college was I had this really great professor. His name is Dr. David Peer at the University of North Carolina. It wasn't even my major. It was an African music class. And I, like Sam, I kind of blanked on a test. And I went to him and I said, look, I need help. I'm autistic. Because like up until then, I didn't want to have services. I was like Sam. I was really stubborn. And again, they don't touch on him, not the reason why he doesn't want to ask for services or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the reason why is like literally he called the student services department and he said, they're waiting for you, go.
Oh, wow.
And like that was the day before fall break. And he didn't need to do that. But like it was because of that wasn't even my major. That was for a general ed assignment class. So a lot like Sam, it wasn't something I was interested in. But because of that was the only reason I was able to graduate college. You know? And instead what you get is oh, well, this teacher's giving him tough love. Yeah. Instead of how does this teacher change and adjust? Because like had my teacher not taken it at face value or he'd just been like that dickish ethics professor, I would have spun out.
Yeah.
So like I feel like that I feel like the college arc, it missed a lot of what could have been done. You know? Yeah,
and I work in inclusion in my day job, and it could have been such a really good opportunity to be like, how can colleges be more accessible to people who aren't the neurotypical typical drinking college student with, you know, partying all the time, etc. Like what could they do to change their environment so it's a bit more comfortable for everybody?
One of the only redeemable things about Paige, I'm sorry I'm going so hard on her, but like is that when she you know does the headphones thing at the dance, their high school dance. Like that's actually a great scene. It's them fighting ableism and people saying, well, I don't want to change people's hair, things like that. Like, you know, like that was actually like, that's really a touching scene. And but then nothing like that ever happens again.
Yeah. That's the extent that it goes to.
Because like what it does is that like I feel like Atypical is meant to make neurotypicals feel better about autism and like, oh, we're only nice to them, you know, and it's not about fixing systems.
Yeah.
You know, because fixing systems, what it does is it makes ableism, you know, to borrow from my friend Spencer Ackerman, like talking about racism and anti-Semitism, it makes it about table manners. And instead about what are the systemic roadblocks.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that makes a lot of people uncomfortable because it requires change.
And it requires seeing the problems and seeing the inherent ableism and everything that's already out there and in ourselves personally in order to change. And people don't like that.
People don't like that. And like you never see Denton change.
No.
You know, they have the Student Services Center and Julia is a counselor there, you know.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
But like, which is weird in a lot of ways.
I have problems with that.
I have a lot of problems with Julia. We need to talk about it. But like, you never see Denton adapt to these students.
Yeah. They're just kind of there in their hub. They've done their bit.
Yeah, exactly. They're their hub, and like, there's never like, you know, because like one of the things that I get off on is like I have a group chat of like autistic reporters and autistic journalists, and it's kind of like where we just chat and we're like, can you believe these neurotypicals? You know, it's just like, you know. When I'm around a lot of people of color, like, you know, and like, you know, especially in a very overwhelmingly white business like journalism, it's kind of one of those things where I can get together with Black people and Latinos and I can just kind of say like, can you believe these white people? You know, like, you know, and the same way, like, you never get these, again, because they don't want to make neurotypicals feel bad.
Yeah.
You never get these, God, the neurotypicals are at it again moments, you know? Yeah. Whereas like a lot of
that too, though.
They could have, because like that, again, like to Rabia's other work, like Will and Grace is great because it lampoons the straights. It's like, the straights, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's where the first time I'd heard the term the straights, you know, and it's like to my point, I've thought that like, oh yeah, straight people, we can like, I can imagine if my friends are gay that like, oh, the straights are at it again. Like,
Yeah.
even I'm like, sometimes, yeah, are us straight people okay? But there's never that, can you believe these neurotypical people?
Yeah.
There's never that moment.
It would have been nice to have at least one somewhere.
It would have been fantastic, and it would have been hilarious. And again, I think that they didn't want to offend neurotypical people.
Yeah.
Which there's a lot of problems with not wanting to offend non-marginalized people.
People need to stop worrying about that so much, I feel.
But I would have loved if they. But I feel like people would have liked it if they had said because then if they had said, look, can you a lot of people, even a lot of white people now recognize after Black Lives Matter that some things about white cisgender heterosexual male culture can sometimes feel suffocating to people who aren't that. When that's the de facto, there's nothing wrong with being white or heterosexual, cisgender or male or any of those things. But when that's the default, it can feel very suffocating to other groups.
Yeah.
Even my very open-minded white friends are like, man, us white people gotta especially after Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, white people can be insufferable. My white friends have said that. I think that us say that neurotypical autistic people saying, man, the neurotypicals, that could have been a great moment and maybe could have created some empathy for autistic people.
Yeah, exactly.
But that never happened.
But and I guess it's also this show still appealing to the white, cis, neurotypical audience more than any other audience.
Yeah, it would have been, again, the one thing, because there's that one character who's autistic in the student group who's kind of sweet on Sam.
Yeah.
I would have liked for him to eventually break up with Paige and wind up with her. I mean, I shouldn't say that every autistic person should wind up with other autistic. I know the equivalent of mixed marriages. I know people who are in mixed marriages, but that would have been sweet because she does seem to get him and she does seem to encourage him and support him. When she sells his stuff. Seems like a much nicer person. One of the reasons why I love Casey is because she puts Paige in her place so much.
Yeah, she does. She puts her through the ringer, and I think that also shows Casey's protectiveness and love for her brother and knowing what he needs.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments is when Paige does that really horrible thing where she talks about all the things Sam can't do to Antarctica. And Sam, which is just I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, Paige? Sam,
he should have broken up with her then.
he should have. And then Sam runs away, and then Paige comes chasing after, and then Paige just Casey's literally like, Paige, no.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I love that moment so much. Because of course you see Casey then helps Sam kind of train for Antarctica. But I also love it because it's just she's just no, you're not doing that to my brother. I adore that so much because you need people like that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like Casey's the other side of the coin to Zahid. Zahid may be a bad influence, and Casey, because Casey's Sam's sister, she's gonna give him shit.
Yeah.
But
it's
I give my sister shit.
I love that she mails that congratulations on winning the Lame Award or whatever it is in season 4, and then he puts it on the fridge and that's where it stays the whole season. He's like, yep.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that lovable ribbing on each other.
Brother, sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But and then immediately what does she do after that? She, helps him train for Antarctica. And that puts perspective on her. That helps give her perspective, in her things for training and things like that. So I adore Casey, if only for that. If that was the only good thing Casey did, I would love Casey. Yeah. But I love Casey for a lot of other reasons.
Same.
That was really my problem with the whole show. Was again, it doesn't require the school as a whole to change. The one character who I think also I should say that even when he gets on my nerves, the character who does mature and understand better and get better a lot throughout the show is Doug.
Yeah. He has a pretty strong arc of growth on the show.
Yeah. I want to talk about the police thing. Can we talk about the police thing real quick?
Yes, let's do that.
So, there's in season 2 when Sam gets stopped by police and things like that, and that leads to to Doug and Megan, who he almost has an affair with.
Yes.
I mean, he kisses her, so he has an affair. To borrow from Bill Clinton, depends on what your definition of is. But like, he has an affair. He definitely has an emotional affair with me.
Yeah.
He has a very emotional affair before he ever kisses her. Let's admit that.
Yeah.
He starts the first responders thing, and again, I did like I liked the attempt. I appreciated the attempt, which is that, Doug's an EMT, so maybe he can train police in helping that. The problem with that is that we know that training autistic police to handle autistic people doesn't work.
Yeah.
And again, like they didn't want it to. I get that they didn't want it to be too political. And let's admit the fact that Sam is a white male, and there have been plenty of non-white male autistic people who've been killed by police or have been shot by police. But like, and then there have been those who've been shot but not killed. There are plenty of not good things that have happened to autistic people of color, or Kaden Clark, I believe was their name, who is transgender and who was shot by police in Arizona. It's not, again, it's about making neurotypical people feel good. Yeah. It's like, if we just train police to handle things better, that's one of the few things where they try to change the system. That's the cure, yeah. But again, it's not even like, maybe police, again, Doug's an EMT. Maybe we should have EMTs respond to autistic people. Like, maybe not have police deal with them. Again, like, even when there was an opportunity to like show something really important, they got cold feet and they lost their toe in
and went, no, that's enough. Yeah.
Yeah, that's enough. We don't want to offend too many people. Like, I understand for something where you want to have wide mass appeal, you can't do everything. You can't burn everything down. No. But like, even then, like, again, you're eluding the truth. But like there could have been a really important thing where, but like, if anything, what it does do is it helps Doug understand his son a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that does a little bit to
that does sustain throughout the rest of the series. I feel.
Yeah, to the extent that Doug winds up going to Antarctica with his son. Like, that's a maturation that, because you go from Doug saying, okay, I'm out, I'm leaving my family because my son's autistic, to I want to understand my son so much that I'm willing to go to fucking Antarctica
which is a pretty big commitment.
That's a big jump, and we should celebrate that. Yeah,
that's true.
And also, like, Doug, he doesn't, like, Casey spends all this time freaking out about whether her dad is going to, accept her for being bisexual. And then he's kind of like, okay, that was refreshing. That was really, really cool. Like, I'm glad they did that. Like, so, like, you don't need to assume the worst in people, So like, again, that's why I think that, like, Atypical was also kind of bad for parents, because it put parents in the worst possible light too, in some ways, even when they think that they were flattering them.
Obviously, in season 1, they just have the one consultant. In season 2, the show added the author David Finch as an expert in the personal experience of autism, who wrote The Journal of Best Practices, a memoir of marriage, Asperger's syndrome, and one man's quest to be a better husband, which I have not read. I've
thumbed through it. It's it's what it is. It's a book about marriage and things like that. It's fun for what it is, and it seems like David has a happy marriage. So now, so like, it works for him. I actually met David at a conference, and I met Jenna Boyd, who plays Paige, because like it was a love and autism conference in San Diego when I was doing book talk, and I talked to them specifically about how do you make sure that Atypical isn't like a Gone with the Wind situation where, like, you portray it. And he mentioned that he had become a consultant and that there were more Black people and people of color and things like that. But
wow.
But yeah, so
well, it sounds like he was a good addition. And then there was Elaine Hall, who I mentioned earlier, who she also wrote a book called The 7 Keys to Unlock Autism, which I don't know how you feel about the term of unlocking autism.
I don't know, how do you unlock autism? It's not under lock and key. It's kind of just there.
Yeah. Yeah. It sort of promotes that, like, we'll
there's a kid inside.
Yeah, when they're just themselves.
Yeah.
But it's used as a textbook at Brown University. And she founded the Miracle Project, which is an LA-based film and theatre training program designed for neurodiverse creatives. And that's where a lot of the peer group actors came from. And they quite a few of them from that project auditioned for the first season as well.
Yeah, well, the autistic characters in the second season in the peer support group are fantastic.
Yeah,
I think that they're fun.
Well,
I wish you could have seen more of them.
That's what bugs me is they were really good actors. Why couldn't they have been in the main role?
And they were funny. They were, interesting. Or like, why couldn't they, at the very least, why couldn't you have like more of them and like Sam hanging out with them? Like, or Sam, that becoming his kind of tribe, and I get that, like, it's kind of ridiculous, just like it's ridiculous to assume that all gay people are going to be friends or all black people are going to be friends, like, but like, I would have liked to have seen him, because Jasper shows up in later episodes, later seasons, but you don't really see much of the other ones from that group. But like, I would have liked to have seen that. I would have liked to have seen more of them, or like how they support one another, or how they, again, like there was a great idea there. It was just a missed opportunity.
And I feel like sort of in season 3 and 4, like things kind of ramp up where some of those actors have more of a role in the plot. Like Sid has quite a lot to do with getting Sam ready for like Antarctica. And Abby as well. Played. I should say their actor names. Sorry. So Sid was played by Tal. Where is she? Tal Anderson, and Abby's played by Kimia Bepornia. And there's also Spencer Hart, Nikki Gutman, Naomi Rubin, and Layla Weiner.
Yeah, but like Abby is never explicitly said to be autistic in his art class, but it's like she's kind of coded as autistic, I've noticed.
Yeah, and she shows up quite a bit with others, I think. And yeah, they're all autistic actors, according to the internet. Those characters have a bit more of a role in the development of the story, but even then, it's like, oh, we'll give them a little bit of a platform, but and then that's it, sort of thing. They don't really.
It's kind of like it's kind of like dressing and icing on a cake.
Yeah,
it's not like it's baked into the actual cake. It's still delicious, but it's not part of the cake. It's an add-on, and I think that was kind of my criticism, my biggest criticism. Of that, because like again, all those characters are delightful when they're playing Battleship and they're in the student group, or when they're talking about things, or when Jasper is talking with Sam's boss about how they have only the second best toothbrush and things like that. Those are all hilarious and fun and interesting and flawed, and like sometimes they're assholes, sometimes they're cool, sometimes like they're still they're allowed to be human. I just wish that we had more scenes with them.
Totally agree. I hope we see them in a lot more shows from here on, at least.
I hope so too.
So we'll move on to accuracy, and I just wanted to ask, based on your experience, what was particularly accurate about the representation of autism for you? Like, what did you relate to the most?
I think the thing that I liked was, and this is probably where we could talk about Abed from Community and compare and contrast.
Sure.
Sam and is that I do think that autistic people, we do navigate like, I do think that the fact that Sam doesn't drive, that's the thing that like I don't drive. That's why I live in a big city, that has public transportation. That's just something. They get the sensory stuff somewhat okay, Again, Sam's relationship with Casey and Zahid are great because his relationships with them are really healthy, and Zahid does, there's a few scenes where Zahid's like, do you want a lot of pressure or no pressure at all? Like, and like, it's just a real friendship and they understand each other, they get each other. That's great. I think that Sam's difficulty, questioning whether he can live on his own is a great arc. Again, I wish they had done more on it. Again, they're like, as much as I want to trash Atypical, a lot of it was just like there was so much more they had like so many great strains that they could have done more of. The executive functioning thing and managing your time is great. I wish that they had, where like he's worried about his schedule. Again, I wish that they had put a word to that, which is executive functioning. So that would have been good. But like I appreciate the attempt at, I appreciate that they at least showed it. I wish that they had put a name to it. I think the special interest thing is good, but like this is where I'm gonna say like the problem that I have with the special interest is with Sam's interest in Antarctica and penguins and the Antarctic as a whole, is that Sam always finds a way to bring everything about everything else back to him. So like, if you remember, he has that scene where he's interviewing Julia, and she says when she looked into her son's eyes, like it put things into perspective. And then when he looks at the penguin's eyes, it's like it's about him. Whereas, I think the thing I love about Abed in Community is that his love of movies and pop culture is kind of the opposite. It allows him to develop relationships and put himself out there. So he connects with Jeff, and he connects with Annie, and he connects with Danny Pudi, who's, again, to the point that like you don't necessarily have to be autistic. You know, like Danny Pudi, for as much as I know, is neurotypical, but Dan Harmon was autistic. But like, you know, like it's like his interest allows him to connect with other people rather than he uses other people's stuff to connect it to center back to him. I think that's one of the reasons why I love Abed in Community compared to why I find Sam kind of insufferable. The one problem I kind of have with Sam is, again, like the idea that Sam, because it seems like Sam's really only interested in Casey for sex in a lot of ways. Yeah. Because like I really didn't like that he's really kind of a dick to her in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, he's not a very good boyfriend.
He isn't. Like don't get me wrong, Casey's a shit.
Oh, you mean Paige?
Paige. No, I mean Casey. Yeah, like I'm gonna say, yeah. Sorry. Not dating. But his relationship with Paige is not that much like where he locks her in a closet for the first season. Yeah. But then, you know, he does have that sweet moment where he, you know, recites her valedictorian speech. But like, you don't even really see, like, he never says goodbye to her. He just slams the laptop when they're Skyping, you know, or like, you know, when they're video chatting. Like, and he never seems to be really supportive of it. It's like, which is not true, because like he clearly, you know, because you see, he clearly wants to help support Paige and or Casey and whatever she's doing. He clearly doesn't want Zahid to fuck up his nursing school stuff. Like, so he has that capacity to care about people.
Yeah, he's also got the capacity to learn social interactions and learn, you know, that you say goodbye to someone on a phone call and stuff, because he's, you know, he's very adaptable.
He is adaptable. So like he's adaptable.
Things are a bit inaccurate.
Yeah, so like that was why I did it. That was why I kind of didn't like his womanizing, and I felt, or like his treatment of Paige, because his treatment of Paige never got better.
No,
you know?
No.
Other things about Sam got better. His treatment of Paige, he's just a bad boyfriend, is what he is.
Yeah,
you know?
And I don't know if that's a very good representation of, you know. Especially when she set out to make a movie about dating and relationships.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, and look, it's fair, you know. Look, not all autistic people are good boyfriends or girlfriends.
No,
like
that's true.
You know, it's like that's okay. But again, they never make it explicit that that's bad.
Yeah,
you know, they never make the text. They never make the subtext the text that like, this isn't autistic behavior. He's just being an asshole. You know,
no,
and like I worry that poisons the well for other types of, because like I know like some of my male friends who are autistic who are married are fantastic husbands. Are just like the most. If you get them talking about their wives, like they will info dump about their wives, you know, like or their girlfriends, you know. You can ask some of my ex-girlfriends how I was, so you know, that's to be determined, you know.
All right,
but please do. But like but like, you know, like I worry that they almost make him being a shitty boyfriend almost as an autistic trait.
Yeah,
it's not.
That's how I read it too. It's like they're saying, oh well, this is just Sam. You know, this is what Paige has to deal with because he's Sam. Like, no, she shouldn't have to deal with like
and like again to the point about you know, there's some neurodivergence, you know, like they later say that Evan has dyslexia, though they never really explore it.
No,
like him having to
nice.
study. Like, that would have been fantastic, like him learning how to study, or Casey helping him study, or him learning stuff from Sam, you know.
Yeah, that would have been
awesome. You know, or him learning to go to disability service. But like again, they never touch on it. But like, you know, in the same way, like Paige clearly has some deep-seated mental health issues.
Yeah.
or anxiety issues, or who knows.
I almost thought they were like writing her as maybe ADHD or something.
Yeah,
like that.
almost as ADHD or bipolar syndrome, because like she clearly has anger issues, like when she has a road rage,
some emotion regulation problems.
Yeah, she clearly has trouble regulating her emotions, like especially when she like loses her shit at Sam in the first season. I would have liked to have seen that. Like, I would have liked to have seen more of. I would have liked to have seen that explored more. Again, like it was a missed opportunity for some of the neuroatypical characters who weren't Sam.
Yeah, exactly. And it sort of came back to, Sam needs all the support, but what about the people around him? Like they do sort of explore, the marriage and them needing support and their growth. But, it would have been
Casey.
Nice. Yeah, and Casey for sure. It would have been nice for someone to say, hey, Paige, like, I think maybe you need some help. Like, because she really struggles with college and she's like finding her feet, but she's kind of doing it alone. So it would have been nice to have an arc where they're like, maybe you need some help because you struggle with emotion regulation or blah, blah, blah. So it's not just Sam's the atypical one and everyone else is not. Sort of
and what it could show is that a lot of people require different supports, and that doesn't make autistic people's need for support any less. Like that would have been a great moral of the story, And I wish we could have had that, but we didn't.
Yeah. Was there anything in particular that was so inaccurate that we haven't already mentioned?
Again, more than anything, it was just missed opportunity after missed opportunity. That was the main thing. Like, I think also the main thing that I didn't like was that Sam seems to blame other people whenever he comes up short. And I didn't like that. One thing I did like was he does get really cross when people assume he can't do stuff. That's like a really accurate thing. I really like that. Of course, when he sets Techtropolis on fire, but that's a really good scene. There's a really good moral to that. And I hate that they turned it into this funny slapstick thing where like he sets a place on fire instead of like him telling his mom, like, no, like I can do this. Like, instead they make it about, oh, see, like Sam needs to, Sam's being, Sam sets a place on fire, that really bugged me. I did like when, he needed a place like in his own apartment that he needed to decompress. And like he was worried about whether he could live on his own. Those are real legitimate things. But again, like one of the things that I wish they could have done is that Casey, her mom takes her phone, like when she's studying, when she's going to track, she needs that support and that rigid schedule. She needs a trainer. She needs all those things to like, they never make that connection with like, okay, yeah, Sam still needs his family, but Casey needs her family to be a track star. Zahid needs his support system when he gets cancer. They never do that, through that parallel. They just make it like Sam's autistic, and of course he's going to have trouble living independently. They could have done it, and they never did, and that was what frustrated me.
Yeah,
because there are parallels that are implied, but never explicitly said.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too when you say like he blames everybody else for things that goes wrong. It doesn't really show him ever kind of blaming himself or getting sort of caught up in
nobody calls him on his shit. That's
feelings.
One thing.
Yeah, that's true. He's not accountable for very much ever. When feeling quite negative or anxious as anybody, like that, all those kind of emotions weren't really explored.
Yeah, I mean, even when Zahid calls him on his shit. I mean, Gretchen is a bad character, and I really don't like Gretchen. It's never really taken from Zahid's point of view that, like, yes, Gretchen is toxic, but, like, who hasn't dated some bad people in college,
Yeah. Hands up.
Like, I mean, I think that would have been great, but again, it's not touched on, so.
Yeah. I've got some views from some of the actors in the show with autism.
Sure.
Spencer Hart says, I have a lot of friends with Asperger's who are just like Sam. I think the show is very realistic showing Asperger's. I think it would be good to show lots of different people with autism. Some are non-verbal, even so that they can see people like themselves on TV. Autism is a spectrum like a rainbow. You need all of the colours to make a rainbow. And I really like that quote because that's something that I had in mind too. Like we're seeing I don't like the term functioning high or low because
I don't like functioning
it's
level
very dismissive.
Either,
But that what people would call a high functioning autistic man, it would have been nice to see some of the people on the other end of the spectrum. Yeah, some
I
people
would have liked to
with
see that too.
additional comorbidities as well, like with physical disabilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, things like that.
Yeah, all of those things. And yeah, Nikki Gutman was another actor who also thought that the show was good and picking up a lot of the feelings that kids on the spectrum go through on a daily basis. For example, relationship problems, growing up problems, sexual identification, etc. So she kind of liked that depiction. She was on the show though, so maybe she's a bit biased.
Yeah, a little bit.
Which is fair. But one thing I was reading from ABC Australia News is one of the viewers of Atypical wrote a little bit in this article about how it doesn't portray autism for women and girls and masking, which is a really
it doesn't.
Point. Yeah, because particularly for females, masking is for viewers, masking or camouflaging describes certain behaviors people with autism try to adopt to try and fit in with those around them, which is it must be a very exhausting thing to have to mask all the time, but it's not something that's really covered at all in Atypical.
It isn't really touched on at all, even with the female autistic characters in the show.
Have you had a lot of experience with masking yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I do as a journalist every day. Like even, I accentuate different parts of myself and I don't. It was interesting. I was talking with a friend of mine just this morning, and she told me, she's like, and she said, like, have you noticed that since you become more open about autism, like you mask less? And then she's like, and I was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, you kind of do. I said, it's kind of, but it's interesting how those kind of dynamics kind of change, But like, it's interesting how, I would have liked to have seen more of them touching on, like, maybe do the girls have to mask more when they go to parties and things like that? Like, I would have liked to have seen more of that, but again,
and
like,
another
just
missed
wasn't touched on.
Yeah.
Another missed opportunity. Yeah.
And another thing that was in a different article I read, I think it was in Psychiatry Online, the fact that he is sort of not depicted as having any sort of psychotropic medications as well. And yeah, like we said before, like not having any comorbidities or on the more pronounced end of the spectrum as well. So
yeah, I mean, I think that was like, I would have liked to have seen more of that. Like, what exactly does Sam do, or what helps Sam get through the day? Like, it's just, again, to your point, it's just kind of like the headphones are a stand-in for everything else.
Yeah, like that's
and him stimming is
encompasses
he stims a lot less later.
Like, I read that it's been praised as a good example of the spectrum of acceptance of autism, which, I'll kind of pay, but it's also in 2022, it's a little bit dated to be talking about the acceptance of autism. Like, it's not.
Yeah, like how much longer do you have to? How much longer do autistic people have to wait?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, come on, we've known about it since the 1910s. Like, we can. I think we can get past acceptance.
Can we move on from that, please? Question for you: do you think Elsa is coded autistic herself?
I've thought of that. Yes, toward the third season, I thought about it a few times.
Yeah.
Just especially the arc where she's taking care of Paige's plants.
Mm-hmm.
And she finds like an interest in there. Her love of Fleetwood Mac. Her kind of needing that board, like as much for her as it is for Sam. Like there definitely are some touchstones that maybe she would be. I mean, Jennifer Jason Leigh is a great actress.
Yeah.
So again, like the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. Autism, it's a genetic thing, so like there's like never like, because later on when there's the whole arc with her mom, and then her mom says that like, oh, you weren't an easy kid. She says, I know I wasn't an easy kid or something like that. They kind of touch on it, but like, again, there's never like, even if there's like an uncle or there's an aunt, like, do you have like an Uncle Steve? Like, does Sam have an Uncle Steve who maybe was autistic, who, likes trains or, instead of penguin?
Hashtag Uncle Steve, where are you? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or was there, did Doug have a mom who was a little idiosyncratic, or there was, Elsa, they kind of touch on it a little bit. It's kind of like how in Rain Man, and we've talked about Rain Man. I don't want to talk about Rain Man all the time, but like the dad's particularity with the rose bushes is almost kind of coded as him maybe being autistic, and him being cold and distant is like, I thought about, like, somebody tweeted at me after I did the You Are Good episode, like, maybe Papa Babbitt's autistic. I was like, yeah, he probably is, it comes from somewhere, and it ain't the vaccines. I wish there could have been a great vaccine joke,
that would have been nice, yeah. Just chuck it in there.
Yeah, like I would have liked a good vaccine joke. I would have liked a good train joke,
For example, getting shots to go to Antarctica, that might have been a good opportunity.
That would have been so fantastic. Like, he gets the shots to go. That would have been just perfect, But like, and I get that, like, you don't want to trivialize a real thing because, like, it's big because you get the kooks, or you get the dickheads,
Netflix,
but like at the same time, but like there's a way to lampoon it,
exactly.
There's a way to satirize it, and it's like, come on, like you can't give me one vaccine joke, Atypical.
I feel like
you can't give me
a general criticism is, though, it is a very like polite sort of show. Like it's a very polite show. Yeah, it's a little bit. I want to say it on the nose in the way that it's like it's wholesome in sometimes to its detriment that it's a little bit.
It doesn't. It wants to keep it family, even though like Sam goes to a strip club.
There's lots of weed in it as well.
There's a lot of marijuana in it, like but like there's. It never wants to go too taboo.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about the fact that, as far as I know, Sam, I think he kisses Paige in a few scenes, but they never show him. They never show even the beginning of having sex.
No, it's all very much behind closed doors.
It's very like there's no there's that opening scene where he's trying to have sex with someone, but like. And it comes off as awkward, and it's kind of played off as a joke about him doing it. But like, Sam is never, like, let me put it this way. Sam is horny, but he's not.
He's not allowed to be too horny.
Sexy.
He's not sexy.
He's allowed to be he's a horny teenager, but he's not allowed to be sexy, Yeah. I got reminded of this essay that with the headline, they said, like, one of the problems with movies today is everybody's hot, but nobody's horny. But like, it's like, Sam's allowed to be horny, but he's not allowed to be sexy.
Yeah, and he kind of doesn't develop his, and maybe that's also a bit of a stereotype. He doesn't really develop his style or his attempts to look sexy to Paige or to anyone else as well throughout the series.
Yeah, you never see them. You're like, one of the things is that because their dates keep getting skedaddle, but like you never see them go on an actual date.
Yeah.
You never see them actually like enjoying themselves, or like so to the point that like so to the extent that you don't really have any emotional investment in Sam and Paige.
Yeah, no, it really gives you none.
Which you do with both Evan and Izzy when it comes to Casey.
Yeah,
which is why
the neurotypicals get that investment, but not Sam. Yeah.
And Doug and Elsa certainly do in more ways than one. And that's a great thing for like it creates the best parts of their character traits. But you never see Sam getting that, and that's one of the problems with it. Is he still has a very underdeveloped sexuality.
Yeah.
Or a very baseline teenage level of teenage understanding of sexuality.
As far as we can tell, because we don't really get to see him have much sex.
We don't get to see hashtag let Sam fuck,
On that note, I want to talk about the portrayal of therapy from my own perspective as a psychologist, and please tell me yours.
Yes, please.
I hate it. Hated it so much.
I can imagine.
Like, it sort of started off like, you know, she does try and help him and break some of the negative sort of beliefs that he had about autism. Like, you know, yeah, people with autism date all the time, and, you know, you know, she's got some sort of positive regard and some good strategies there. But the fact that he falls in love with her, or, you know, crushes on her, is such a trope, which I get so sick of in the media. I just want it to die, please.
Not just with autistic people, it's with a lot of them.
Yeah,
know, like, that's been it's been beaten to death.
And she just has no boundaries. She's got no boundaries at all. Like,
she's bad at her practice too, because she doesn't draw those boundaries at all. Like, they make her out to be a really bad psychologist. Yeah, no, she's not.
It's just not good for the profession, which I'm always harping on about.
It's not good for, it's as lazy as the idea of journalists sleeping with their sources, you know?
Relatable.
It's the laziest and easiest joke and trope that they can go to.
Exactly.
And they go there.
And even when they like finish up sessions, she like, Sam calls her every week, which she just accepts, and she ends up having like a relationship with Sam's family and like with Elsa, and she just pops up all the time, and it's just not accurate, and it's not very appropriate and professional. And I feel like it's trying to sort of humanize her, like how she has relationship problems, and she ends up being a single mum, and, you know, that's great and wonderful, but it also kind of comes off as, oh, she's totally flawed, she's a mess, and look at her, she's trying to give Sam therapy. Oh, what's she doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, she doesn't come off looking that great, even when they try to make her look good.
Yeah.
And she's a really poorly served character. There was an opportunity to do good with her. Like, she's a good, like, the actress is great.
Yeah,
the actress is great
acting.
But the actress and the character deserved better, in my opinion,
agree.
In my estimation.
And the therapy deserved better portrayals of the work.
The profession deserves a lot better than what you guys got. So, I mean, I think it's just like, I think the thing is that it just really just isn't believable.
Yeah, no.
Like,
it's a bit extreme.
And, you know, Sam is never explicitly told by his parents that this isn't okay.
Yeah. That's a big problem I had with it. There's really no consequence for his pursuit of her.
There isn't any consequence.
Yeah, he like breaks into her house.
There is no consequence.
And that's all fine. I'll just sort of list off the tropes that we've kind of already mentioned.
Yeah.
Person with autism being a jerk.
Yeah.
The fall in love with your therapist trope. The we are all the same, or we all know each other trope, because all the kids with autism at the college sort of hang out together.
Yeah, exactly.
Straight white male. And also, I guess, with Paige as well, she's kind of that do-gooder, self-appointed autism expert.
Oh, yeah, she is. I should say, like, the one thing that is kind of subversive in the show, and there's not a lot, to your point that that's a very polite show and that it's not subversive at all. The one thing that is kind of subversive is when she has her whole Sam can't go to Antarctica thing.
Yeah.
That is a good way of flipping the do-gooder thing.
That's true, yeah. That's a really good point.
That is a really good way, because she's couching it in, he can't do this. But even then, it's couched in more, she's upset.
Yeah.
That he's not being a good boyfriend. And yeah, he's a shitty boyfriend. That was date night, you know? But like, you know, again, to the point that, you know, he's a dick. But like, that was somewhat subversive. That was a really shitty thing that Paige did. And it flips the card thing, like where he has to give a card when he talks about things.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good flipping it on the head. And I think that's a really good fuck you to that idea.
That's right. And it sort of explores the sort of underlying, like, sort of almost the truth.
Condescension?
Yeah, the condescension of those people who, you know, might have a friend who's autistic and be like, oh, I know everything about autism right now, even though, you know, they just know that person. And and that maybe there's actually some unhelpful views on what that person can and can't do still underlying that.
Yeah. So like that was the one thing. And then, you know, conversely, and then the thing that it does that it flips it on its head is that, you know, again, Casey says, okay, you got these problems. Let's train you for it. Like, which is just, that's probably my favorite scene in the entire show.
Yeah. And it's great that at the end he actually, well, we assume, goes to Antarctica. Yeah, fuck you, Paige, you were wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, that was good because, yeah, we mentioned all the stereotypes. Unless there's anything else that we haven't touched on.
It's a very basic show. There's nothing really particularly intriguing.
Yeah, I agree.
It's kind of just, you don't have any reason to be emotionally invested in
Except
anybody.
Casey, because I am emotionally invested in her.
Except Casey.
Personally.
Because she actually has a beating heart.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And she has the most complex story. But to your point, it's a very inoffensive. By it being inoffensive,
yeah, it's very inoffensive.
In its attempt to be inoffensive, it winds up making a very bland show.
Yeah, it looks pretty. Like it, I really like. Also, the art and the drawings in the later seasons were actually drawn by someone with autism as well. Like I like how it's presented. It's very well produced, but yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. There's an looking back. There's what is the actual appeal of it apart from some of those nice characters.
By it not wanting to ruffle anyone's feathers.
Yeah.
It does a detriment because it prevents people from really being provoked and being like, oh, and jolted and caring about stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't give the audience growth. And smash things, like smash some stigmas that they might have had.
Yeah, it doesn't. So yeah, but like, you know, I think that's the one thing I would say is that by being polite, its biggest flaw is that it's too polite.
Yeah, and I think the biggest stereotype overall is that it's a stereotyped portrayal, essentially. Like,
yes, it is. It's a stereotyped portrayal. It feels like it was a facsimile of a lot of older or ideas. The thing, my friend Sarah Luderman says that like any writing or journalism or movie portrayals or pop culture portrayals of autism, like pre-2007 are going to be cringe.
Yeah.
2017, this is especially cringe. And like, it's almost like, how have we, to your opening question, how are we still here? You know?
Yeah.
How the hell are we still doing this?
And I don't think it thinks that it's cringe, because one thing that I guess we can say is helpful about it is that it actually, you know, at least it names that Sam has autism, whereas a lot of shows and movies would code a character with autism and then they would become sort of the butt of the joke or the quirky character. And in some ways it's trying not to do that.
Yeah.
But I also think Sam's still the butt of the joke a lot of the time.
Oh, he is. He absolutely is the butt of the joke in a lot of them.
Yeah, so yeah, hopefully. Well, I guess it's finished now, which is probably what we need. Yeah. But I feel like it's not going to date very well. I don't think people are going to come back to this show.
It's not going to, I think, and I think that I take that back. I mean, we see how for so long Black people have wanted really good whole portrayals of Black people on television and movies. And we're still not there.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Hollywood doesn't want to change. And anytime that you take too big of a risk, then, then it pisses people off and, the establishment mad and things like, but maybe it'll date well in the sense that Hollywood will still see it as, as good enough. And they're going to say like, well, at least we're not Sia. God,
thank you, Sia. We're looking better than we were before now.
Sia exists to make Atypical look better, Sia's music, and like my feeling was, my whole, because like by the end of the whole Oscar season, I think Tina Fey and Amy Poehler joked about Sia's music, like at the Golden Globes or something like that. Like, and like I was like, you know, and I was like, hey, cool. Tina Fey, you know, Tina Fey did like that was cool. But like on the other end, it was like by that point, it had already been nominated for a Golden Globe. It wasn't going to win but like, so it allowed Hollywood to almost, and I don't give Sia a pass.
Nah.
It allowed Hollywood to pick on Sia.
Yeah.
Without taking a look at itself.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true. Yeah.
Because like Leslie Odom Jr. is in that movie, you know, and like I fucking love Hamilton, you know, like you know, but like but like it allowed them to say like, well, we're not gonna do that, like God, but you know, like we're not gonna change, you know. No. So I think that Hollywood will still see that as, you know, yeah, we did our job. We didn't embarrass ourselves too much. A lot of people liked it.
And we did the bare minimum of having like a couple of autistic actors or, you know, consulting with someone.
Yeah, so like it got enough. And like this was really when Netflix was really starting to go all in on exclusive content.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, it'd done House of Cards, it'd done The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, but like this was the first like family kind of sitcom thing that they had done. Like, so it was like, so Netflix is like, hey, this kind of worked. You know, we did our job.
Yeah.
Anyone can watch it. It's easily accessible. There's a low barrier to entry. So like, it's fine. You know, the critical reception was good enough.
Yeah. And it's definitely made for a neurotypical audience.
It is made for a neurotypical audience. It's not made for, it's not disabled content made for disabled people, you know? Yeah. Like,
but that's not what Hollywood has ever been good at.
That's not what Hollywood wants. Well, Hollywood doesn't like making black content for black people. Hollywood doesn't like making, you know, which is weird because, like, if you look at something like, and I've said this before, like, you know, Encanto is fantastic because it's Latino content made for Latinos.
Yes,
you know?
And as a white person, I also can enjoy it and love it as well.
Yeah, so exactly. Like, you know, Crazy Rich Asians was great.
Yeah, true.
Because it was Asian content made by Asian people. Black Panther is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite superhero movies because it was made by a black director. Yeah. It was made like, you know, it was made with love and care, and it was like, and it was all these things. So like, this is, you know, people with disabilities are about 20% of the population.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's not counting all the people who have disabled loved ones in their lives who would want to see, like, it's good business to do good whole portrayals of disabled people in a way that's also accessible to other people. You know, but like I feel like it's almost kind of, they're still afraid of taking that risk. And one of the things I do worry about is I do have a friend who said, like, she's tried pitching other types of autism comedies and things like that. But like some in Hollywood and some in the entertainment business are like, well, we saw what the bad reception was from the autism community from, you know, Atypical. So like it almost kind of poisoned the well, so to speak, which kind of sucks.
And then Sia went ahead and poisoned it a little bit more.
She put a whole thing of cyanide in the damn well. So, you know.
Yeah, it's so hard. Yeah. And that's why it needs to be right. If it's not got right, then it can do so much lasting damage.
Yeah, it can do so much. It can do much more lasting damage. It can make producers, because producers, and look, to producers, to their credit, they're not going to pick up something that's going to cause a shitstorm. Like, I understand it's a business, but they're also just not going to. But like in the same respect, these things do have a larger ripple effect.
Yeah,
that worries me. So
I feel like the closest Hollywood has come to giving disabled people the opportunity to make a disabled film, you know, a film about disability, is Crip Camp. And
Crip Camp is phenomenal.
I've got a whole episode where I just gush about Crip Camp.
Yeah, it's a great. I mean, I've gotten the chance to meet Judith Heumann, which is like my mom was there too. Like, and I got to explain to her later that like Judith Heumann is to the disability rights movement what Dolores Huerta is to, like, you know, the farm labor work, or like, you know, and I loved that, you know, I loved that the Obamas picked it up. And, you know, because it was done through Obama's production company, you know, I loved that they allowed Jim Lebrecht to make it. You could tell it's you know, I was really upset that it didn't win the Academy Award.
Me too, but I haven't seen My Octopus Teacher, so
yeah, I can't judge it too much. But like, Even then it was like you had people just the main beef I had was that they put a ramp on the in case Crip Camp won, which you motherfuckers should have had a ramp to begin with. But they set it up like this was going to be that it won. It was kind of the same thing that would happen with Chadwick Boseman when they set it up to make it seem like he was going to win, and then and no disrespect to Anthony Hopkins, I love Anthony Hopkins, he's autistic, but they set it up to make it seem like this is going to be something, and that they could pat themselves on the back, and then they're like, fooled ya, So that was my frustration, But again, Crip Camp got a lot of great reception, and it shows what can happen when you do really good disabled content. But but then you look at as much as I hate to admit it, I haven't seen an episode of Everything's Gonna Be Okay. I wish I did, but the fact that it didn't get A, that's on me, that's my fault. But B, the fact that it didn't get the same push that Atypical did.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to make a show, it's another thing to aggressively market it.
Yeah. Is it marketed at all in the US? Because
it was marketed a bit. It wasn't because it was available on Hulu, it was available on Freeform, but it wasn't to the same extent that Atypical was. So that was my problem with that.
And I guess
it's not just
Atypical has a huge company behind it, whereas I don't think the same was for Everything's Going to Be.
Yeah, Netflix. The fact that Netflix got behind it says everything.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I haven't actually finished Everything's Going to Be Okay, because when you start a podcast, you got to watch a million trillion things. But yeah, it's really good. Some arguments you could say that is helpful about Atypical, and let me know if you agree. It does send the message people with autism can integrate in the community, have a job, have a great friendship with neurotypical and autistic people, have relationships and have sex, even though we don't see him have sex. we know he does have sex, which is a huge stereotype message that people have been given, that people with disabilities aren't sexual,
asexual,
or want to have relationships, but he actively wants one. And I think maybe it's a helpful model for neurotypical parents who might see themselves in Elsa, because she goes through a bit of a journey of having to step back and let Sam be his own person. A little bit. Could have been explored more, as you said. But yeah, it does maybe, again, I think it's more creative for the neurotypical people, so they might actually see themselves more in the autism mum.
Yeah.
And I've just written here, I bloody love Casey. More Casey, please.
I love Casey. Doug becomes a better dad in the show.
Yeah.
And as much of a shithead as Zahid is, he does accept Sam for who he is.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's a very healthy relationship that we see with ups and downs and fights and coming together, and a good relationship. Oh, and Elaine Hall, who founded the Miracle Project. And I think it highlights how it can be it may have done some good things. Elaine Hall says that one of the questions that some directors asked her early on is, well, what if they have a meltdown on set, and what if it's too much for them? And I think people were nervous, and I'm proud to say that we have debunked myths about what's possible for individuals on the spectrum. What I always say is, no, being an actor on set, that's somebody's happy place. It's being in the real world that can be really challenging. And the Miracle Project actors, because they've changed the way that Hollywood perceives working with someone on the spectrum, it's value added rather than taking anything away from anyone. So yeah, it sounds like she's doing positive stuff, and being able to say to directors, it would just be nice if someone with autism was the person advocating for that.
That would have been nice.
That would have been nice. But saying because I'm absolutely sure that comes up a lot. What if we can't cater for them on set? And it's well, so what? Cater for them on set, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You got to change,
Yeah, exactly. And Spencer Hart says, maybe someone who thinks autism is weird and doesn't like people with autism, hopefully she hasn't had that experience a lot, will watch Atypical and see that autism is awesomeness, that people with autism are just like they are. We want to be loved, and we have hopes and dreams like everyone else. Also, we are smart and funny and talented, and then maybe they won't be mean to us anymore.
Which you could tell that some people have been mean to her.
Yeah. And that's probably the case for lots of people on the spectrum. So, there can be some positive things from this show. Well, at least the people involved in the show has found it positive for them. So, and hopefully that'll help their careers as well. Anything else that you thought was helpful about Atypical?
I think that the one thing was that, like, I like that at least Hollywood tried to do something about autism.
Yeah, they tried.
They tried, I think that they at least tried to learn. They got the criticism in the first season, and they tried to fix it.
They did. They tried to fix it.
How much they, big problem was that, they couldn't, they can't redo the first season. Of course, you can't do that. But they worked to fix things when they were receptive to criticism.
Yeah.
Which is better than a lot of other, nowadays it's like when, filmmakers get insulted, critique, they're like, oh, you're trying to cancel me or some shit like that.
Yeah.
They were very much like, no, like, we want to do a better portrayal of autism. They never said they fucked up, but they said we're going to try to do better.
Yeah. We're going to take the criticism on board.
That's better than, I think, a lot of, that's sure as fuck better than Sia.
Oh yeah. She's like, fuck you, fuckity fuck.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so like that's something I can say, is that they heard the criticism, they didn't dismiss it.
No.
Which is so easy to do.
Yeah. And it's sadly not that common. So that is progress.
And, I think the fact that Sam is the least interesting character, as interesting as it shows that, like, he didn't have to be the center of everything.
Yeah. It would have been nice if, like season 3 and 4, like he faded a little bit more into the background and we highlighted a new character with autism, maybe from the support group, and it became more their story. That would have been
that would have been great. Or at least elevated them to a co-star role. Or maybe having an autistic roommate with Zahid and Sam,
Yeah, exactly.
Or their neighbor is one of the people from the support group or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But by the way, can we just say, the one thing that's also unrealistic is not related, how the hell did they afford such a nice apartment working at a tech store, at a big box store?
I was gonna ask you, like, how much would that cost?
Like, and we know Sam's family isn't that wealthy because Casey needs a scholarship to go to her private school. So, like,
yeah, exactly.
How did they afford that? It's kind of like with Friends. Like, how the hell do they afford nice apartments in Manhattan?
Yeah, they're college students.
They're college students who work at a tech store part-time,
Yeah.
And on top of that, like, how do they fit that in between, Zahid buying a gram,
Oh, yeah. But I guess that's a common trope in lots of.
It's a common trope of, like, every television. I still don't know how they afford how Carrie affords a nice apartment in New York as a journalist. So,
and all of those designer clothes and shoes.
Yeah, I don't know. So.
That's always been a bugbear. One thing I will say that I didn't like about the last season, which has nothing to do with autism, is the cancer diagnosis for Zahid. Like, it had this really opportunity for probably to make the audience cry, which usually shows are keen to do. And,
but they made it a dick joke.
But they turned it into a dick joke. Yeah, like, come on.
And I get that I get that Zahid's whole thing is he's a horn dog, and I get all that, but, like, did they need to do that? Really?
Yeah. And it felt really shallow, because I've had a family member go through pretty much very similar to Zahid, and, a young person going through cancer diagnosis and treatment. And, when that arc started, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh, this is really bad for me right now. It's going to be hard. And then it was like, it's all right. Like, the doctor's like, it's okay. We can completely treat it and you'll be fine. And, like, I don't even think that that's the conversation that would be had. It would be like, we'll treat it now, but, we'll monitor it. Like, it's not like you're cured of your cancer. And it just became a laughable thing, which could be kind of, it's just a little bit disrespectful to anyone who's gone through that journey.
Who's gone through, testicular cancer, who's gone through something like that. Like, again, missed opportunity, And there could have been a chance to talk about how Zahid needs support as much as Sam needs support.
Exactly. I think they touched on that a little bit, but And, you know...
But again, they were too afraid. They got cold feet. So.
Yeah, they're like, oh, no, let's just make it a party for his saying goodbye to his ball. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you about too, before we wrap up is I think one sort of obvious thing about the first season as to they didn't have someone with autism sort of guiding them is they used that person first language in the first episode.
Yes,
and
yes.
The Doug was told to stop using identity first language, which is very behind of...
So how fluent was that language that Rabia got?
Yeah,
you know?
like who gave her that advice? They were wrong.
Yeah, I wonder who. Yeah, clearly not an autistic person.
Yeah, and often, you know, there's people still aren't aware of that. And, you know, I only sort of learnt that about 2 years ago. And I worked from, you know, once I graduated and I was working with people with autism, I was told people with autism, it's not autistic people from the very beginning. So that mind shift I needed to do, because that's what people were telling me who are neurotypical.
It fucks with your head, yeah.
So, yeah, it just highlights the wrong message can be given without that input from the actual community. Do you think that there's anything harmful about the show that could have a lasting impact for neurotypicals or people with autism?
I mean, as I said before, the only thing that I really, you know, I think that the dating stuff is really just the main thing, that, like, you know, Sam being a dick to his girlfriend is seen as him being autistic rather than him being an asshole.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like I said, I just worry that, I worry that the very valid criticism that the creators of Neurotypical listened to.
Yeah.
Will chill other creators from touching autism, because they'll take the wrong lesson, which is not that, if you do something about autism, you'll be criticized, but that if you do bad portrayals of autism, it's going to be criticized.
Yeah.
But I worry that it's going to be interpreted that way, and it's going to disincentivize people that the entertainment industry is going to learn the wrong lesson from it and say, okay, we're just not going to touch autism ever, you know?
Yeah. But hopefully things like, I haven't seen it, but The Reason I Jump, which is created by people with autism.
I've read the book. I need to watch the documentary.
Cool, yeah. And Crip Camp and Everything's Going to Be Okay. People are like, these have all kind of come out pretty recently as well. So hopefully people will see those and go, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, and the reception was fantastic to them. They got good, positive, critical reception and good reception from the community. So I hope that shows entertainers that you can do a great job. And you could do it in the right way. And if you have input from the community, that you won't get, you know, your head bitten off, you know?
Yeah. Listen to that, directors and producers and writers.
I mean, like I said, I think that, like, the thing is that autism, like, more people, like, because the more people, like the CDC showed that, like, I think something like 1 in 44 people now are, you know, have autism diagnosis. There are going to be more people who are autistic, and that means that more people, like, I get Rabia's impulse that, you know, that's a good impulse, which is like, hey, there's, you know, there's a lot of autistic people in the world. We should probably portray them. We should probably, and again, that's why I don't want to prohibit, you know, non-autistic creators from trying to create an autistic character. But in the same way, if you're going to do it, you got to do it. You have to do it the right way. And I think that they're naturally, you can't, just like how you can't talk about humanity without including LGBTQ people or Black people or women or Latinos or Native Americans or Native people or Native people wherever, you know, or Asian American or Asian people, you know, like you can't talk about you can't talk about the span of humanity without talking about disabled people, including autistic people. They're gonna need to eventually include an autistic person one way or the other. And I just hope that they recognize that the frustration with Atypical wasn't a frustration at portrayals of autism. It was a frustration at bad portrayals of autism. And that doesn't disincentivize you. Because I want to see more movies with autism in them, you know? I love movies. The reason why I'm on this podcast with you, the reason why I go on podcasts with Sarah Marshall is because I love movies. I love going to the movies. It's one of the things I miss most about. Yeah, exactly. You know, like, there can be better. There can be more can be done. More can be done. And I hope that the right lessons are learned. That's what I'm trying to say.
Our final thought from a cast member, Spencer Hart, is I want to continue to advocate for myself and others on the spectrum. Nothing about us without us. And I think that just says it all.
That's good. That's good.
Shall we kind of go through the criteria for this little shindig I have going on and give it a bit of a score? Which we usually do, and it's usually chaos. But anyway, so the first thing is lived experience. Would we give it a point for any? And I kind of want to not give it a point because it started off with none.
Does half a point count?
Half a point. We can do half a point.
Okay, yeah, we'll do half a point.
Excellent, let's do it. Accuracy?
I don't want to give it a point.
No, yeah. No, me neither. Good. We agree. Stereotypes. I don't want to give it a point. I think there's too many stereotypes.
Yeah, there's way too many. Yeah, so give it no points.
And helpful or harmful? Is it more helpful or harmful?
I feel kind of neutral on it.
Yeah.
I feel like it didn't move the need. I feel like it didn't cause, aside from creating a chilling effect for future autism projects, I don't feel like it caused any long-term harm like Sia's music or Rain Man did. It doesn't end in institutionalization like Rain Man.
It wasn't groundbreaking enough.
Yeah, so like, I don't know. How do you score that? Is that nope? I guess that's no point.
I guess if it's borderline, I'd give it a half point.
Let's give it a half point, okay? Yeah.
So, yeah, it didn't score very well. 1 out of 4.
It didn't score well. No.
Which I'm not surprised by, but when we were thinking about what to talk about, I was like, Atypical's not too bad. But now when you actually look at it, it's like, no, it's not great.
I mean, it's again, like looking at other portrayals of autism, it's not the worst.
No, but that's not something to aspire to.
But it's not something to aspire to. It's it's the late night bean burrito. It's not the most terrible thing for you, but it's
in Australia you would say it's the kebab from the train station.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I was mentioning the burrito because Paige, throws that burrito. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Oh, well, thank you so much for talking to me about Atypical. I had such a good time.
I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Before we go, is there anything you want to plug or anything you're working on at the moment that you'd like the audience to know about?
Just the same thing. My book, We're Not Broken, the paperback version is coming out soon. We're working on international versions too. It's available on audiobook, also in Australia. So if people want to listen, it's available on Audible. And yeah, you could just follow me on Twitter. I tweet way too much at Eric M. Garcia. This was fun. I really appreciate this. This was fun. We connected over Instagram. After I'd done a few episodes of You're Wrong About It, You Are Good. And I'm really happy that we finally got to do this. So yeah.
I'm absolutely stoked. I've been excited about this since I reached out to you and you said yes. I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. So thank you so much. It's been wonderful.